Chris. Welcome to Flat Tank Friday again. The Douglas project continues and I feel like it's in full swing for a change. This week, over a couple of days, I'm going to attempt to make this. It's the piece off the bottom of the gear change lever, and it goes on something like this, and it turns the left and right motion into a backwards and forwards motion basically. I borrowed this off a friend. He's got a Douglas in a lot of parts. He doesn't want to sell any of it, sadly. So he loaned me this to copy, and I'm going to try and copy that. I'll confess to you, I've already done the copy. I've done this piece. Did it when I first got the bike, and then put it in the 2-hard basket, and then got consumed making YouTube videos. So it's not until now that I've come back to it. So let's not mess around for too much. I'll bring you in on some video. A lot of it's my first attempt at trying to video myself working, which is actually really difficult. So you've got most of it. Some stages I've missed, and maybe it doesn't work out real well. Let me know what you think. Have at it. Let's have a look at me attempting to make this. Well, here's what I believe is a genuine gear change mechanism on the Douglas. Certainly the knob is probably a replacement, and the arm on the top has been well ground and is quite thin, maybe even replaced, not sure. Doesn't matter, looks good, and that's not the problem. So it goes down through the tank and it rotates right down the bottom here, and in here where this piece of steel is, we're going to try and manufacture a genuine part. Someone's made this, does work, but it's not what we're looking for. Let me bring you over to the bench and we'll have a look and see what a genuine part looks like. Here's a rod out of the bike. This is one I borrowed off a friend. Here's the top piece where the wooden knob would be attached, and you can see this part here is quite thick. That's what makes me believe the other has been ground down to get imperfections out of it, or perhaps even reproduced. Not sure. Again, doesn't matter. So this piece is fixed, and when it's turned, it turns the whole rod. Down here is what I believe is a genuine part. Where I showed you the long rectangular piece that's split at the back with the bolt through it, that's this piece and this piece, all made in one, when in reality this articulates through here. So this piece comes off. I'll try and get it off one-handed. Spring washer, and then this piece comes out, and this is the articulation, and the rod to the gearbox actually goes through the small hole just there. I've already made this piece, as I've already pointed out to you. I've had the bike for a little while, even before I started the YouTube channel. So let me bring it in, I'll show you the piece I've already made, and then the project is to make this piece, and to see if I can get that pretty much right, or to where it at least works. Let's have a look at this piece first. These are the two pieces together at the top. You'll see, of course, the thread is much longer, and that's my style. Have a habit of leaving things long and cutting them off later. It's made in 3 parts. I fabricated this piece on the lathe, the same as this piece, and then I bent the rod in the middle. Now, I'm not a great brazier, so to speak, but that was my first attempt at brazing. Yeah, it's stuck together and it's not too bad. I filed it back. It'll certainly do the job. That piece appears pretty much right, and so I don't have any footage of it. As I say, it was before the YouTube channel. But there are the two pieces, what I believe is a genuine one, and the part I'd already produced. So let's move on to the other part, this piece, and that's the piece I need to produce, or attempt to produce. So looking at this piece really closely, this one's got a hole all the way through it, and a hole through the shaft as well. I don't appear to have a hole through the shaft of mine. I haven't disassembled it. I'm not concerned about it at this point. What I need to do is to make this part. Now it's about 17.5 mil, and I've got a piece of rough stock that I've cut off, and I've just cut it off a piece of scrap I had sitting in the bin. And so I'm going to try and make this in two parts. Going to make this piece, going to make this piece, and then I'm going to attempt to give them a zap with the welder and weld them together. Okay, I've got the stock in the lathe and I've just faced it off and it's nice and straight. So I'm making the big part first. I'm going to draw a hole. We're just going to measure. So I'm not that old, or not as old as I look, so I'm a metric man. And it's 9.54, so it tells me it's about 3/8 for the imperial measurers in us. And as I click the calipers, certainly 3/8. Because it's imperial, 3/8 is the size, and I've got both sizes, so I'm just gonna use a centre drill, spot the centre, and I might put a little pilot hole and then put the 3/8 hole in. I'm just going to check the shaft on the bike to make sure that the shaft is 3/8 as well, just to make sure that the shaft hasn't been replaced with, you know, a metric equivalent. You can go into a hardware store now and ask for 3/8 and someone will give you 10 mil, and of course they're not the same size, no matter how hard the man at the hardware store tries to tell you that. So I'm going to measure the shaft, and then I'm going to spot this, pilot hole it, and drill a 3/8 hole. So I'm not sure how much of this you're going to see. I hope this works out. Haven't shot this before, so I'm going to spot this, then I'm going to drill a pilot hole, and then the 3/8 hole. I'm going to go in about 25 mil or an inch. Now, the part itself is only about 18 or 19 mil long, or maybe 3/4, but we'll measure that in a minute. Let's try drilling these holes. Nice and easy. These are just little cheap centre drills that I bought, but they find the centre really simply and allow you to get a nice clean hole in the middle of the material. Alright, I'll pop that back in the box and we'll find some drill bits and let's get into this. So I've opted for 7/32 because it's a nice fresh bit out of the box. I've got lots of worn ones because I'm a bit of an abuser of drill bits. And then I've just spotted that with a little bit of a product I use called Tap Magic. Great little cutting fluid. It's not overly expensive. I buy it once a year probably. And then it just saves the drill bits. And that's probably going to about do us for the hole. I'm probably an over driller rather than an under driller. Steel bar and steel stock is relatively cheap. Let's clean that off and get the bigger hole. 3/8 drill bit this time, and for those of you that have watched my channel, you can see why I've opted to try and get a bigger lathe. The small lathe, whilst it'll hold the stock, drill a 3/8 hole, a lot of fooling with the tail stock, not enough throw in the tail stock. You've got to undo the nut to move the tailstock every time, and you can't really drill a deep enough hole. There's not enough in the quill, so you can see why I've opted for a bigger lathe. This has served me really well, and it certainly does the job. So nice liberal coating of the cutting fluid. Again, it's cheap enough and drill bits are not, so let's drill. So I'm measuring I'm about 30mm into that hole, so we're going to have a nice clean cut with a nice clean hole on the other side. I'm a bit of a weirdo, like to clean up, like to keep it looking good as I go. Important perhaps to talk about a pilot hole. You saw how easy that 3/8 hole was to drill. My dad, if Dad ever watches this, my dad always taught me to drill a pilot hole and to drill a hole that big. So whatever one side of the taper of the drill bit you're going to drill is, drill the pilot hole that size. So I just held the 7/32 up and thought, oh yeah, that's roughly half the size, or roughly the size of that taper. And you drill that nice and easy, and then certainly the 3/8 hole drilled out really easy. I'm going to clean up a little bit, cut this off and face off the other side and try and get it to a good length. So looking in at that now, I've machined that to 16.5mm in length. I've just run the file over the edge and the file over the inside edge to take any burrs off, and I've just run some memory paper on it. I'm just going to spin that, to run some memory paper on it, clean it up, and then, you know, the part's pretty much ready to test. Let me clean this up and then we'll have a look at it on the bench. Here's the two parts laid on the bench. This one's cleaned out really well. This isn't sophisticated work. Just cut the length, hole bored in the middle. I'm not going to bother running the ever so slight taper on it either side. This one just appears to be tapered slightly. Not going to bother doing that, I don't think. And the hole, well, I'll worry about that later. I think I can pop it in the mill and draw a hole. That isn't rocket science either. Getting this bit in the middle is the interesting bit. I don't know that I'm going to achieve as good a result as what I'll probably want. But there's the first part of that done. I don't think I'll bore you with the second part. I'll make the second part in exactly the same way. Machine the outer diameter, bore the holes to size, and then we'll have the two parts ready to put together. I will show you though, this part, if I can do this one-handed, slides really cleanly onto the shaft. Now, it's not a machine fit, you know, tolerance fit, but it's gonna sit on the shaft really well. It's just the tiniest bit of sideways. But, you know, for me and for the skill level I have, I think that's pretty good. I don't have reamers, I don't have those sorts of pieces of equipment. I think if I pin that, that isn't going to move anyway. I'm fancying perhaps a dimple in the shaft and a grub screw. Might do the job rather than a hole right through and a pin. But I do have some roll pins, so maybe I'll do that. We'll see. Well, here's where I'm up to. I've made these two pieces, slid them onto the shaft. They go on. It all measures up pretty good. I've now got to weld the two bits together and perhaps drill a hole. It's more or less looking like it should. It's more about whether it actuates the gear change shaft to the gearbox correctly. I'm reasonably pleased at this stage, but the next job is welding, and that ain't my favourite pastime. So here's where I'm up to. All basic lathe tasks, parting off, filing the edges, drilling holes, rudimentary stuff. Just the one piece of stock scrap I had. That was the smaller of the two bushes, and there's the other end that I cut off, and that goes back in the scrap bin now, and I'll use it for something else down the track. Always good to have steel in stock, and the project's coming along well. I'll bring you back when I've got a little bit more to show you. Welcome back to the project. Here's what's happened so far. It's not pretty, but I've probably done the best I can. Welding is not my thing, so I have made the piece that goes on the shaft. Below the bottom is the piece I've made. The top is the genuine article. They more or less line up. They're more or less in the same plane. I think it'll probably work. It's not classy, but I think with some filler and maybe paint, although I'd considered attempting nickel plating at home, it'll probably be okay. I welded the two pieces together on a jig. Excuse the noise. The big piece bolted to here and the small piece bolted to there. there's a gap in the middle. Centre to centre it should be 16.5mm, so that's what it is, and I bolted them up. I probably could have made the smaller piece slightly bigger, so that they butted together a little bit clearer. But there was a gap, and the weld has been okay, especially seeing I'm a hack. All in all, I'm not completely displeased. I think it's worthwhile now fitting it up to the bike and seeing if it operates in the same plane as what it should. Then maybe drill a hole, dimple the shaft and put a set screw in, or something like that, a grub screw. All in all, a pretty reasonable effort, seeing, as I say, I am a hack. I blaze away in the shed doing the best I can. So I'm pretty pleased at this point to have manufactured this from scrap out of my bin, and that's the genuine article. Of course, you know, I'm likely to find a genuine one now, and then I won't need it. But the challenge has been great, and that's what it's all about in the shed. I'll bring you back when I attempt to fit it up to the bike. Well, here's the part fitted up to the bike to the best of my ability to see how it works. It's really difficult to get in there to get your video of that. The shaft will need dimpling, and I will need to put a set screw or grub screw in, or maybe even a pin right through. I haven't decided. I feel as though I'm on the edge of making a mistake, so I'm packing up for the night. I've been at this now for a fair while. It works. It goes into the bike just like that. The hole where that pin is seems about right, although I thought I might pin it from the side and through. There is a little dimple on the shaft where I think it might have been pinned before, but I think the hole's been filled. It's been pretty successful. It's not perfect by a long shot, but gee, it's well hidden in behind there, and I think I'm on the verge of getting it right and getting it wrong. Sometimes when I work too long, I make a horrible mistake late in the night. So there's the bike, there's the part. It's been a success. I'll bring you along for a bit more of the ride again tomorrow when I have another go. Might set up in the mill, drill a hole, and then drill the shaft. We'll see how we go. The new day will bring new energy. Well, here's what I had to copy, and here's what I made. It's a bit rough, but it's probably at the level that I can produce. I'm not a machinist or a fabricator or anything like that. Just a guy in the shed. It's pretty simple. It works. That's the main thing. It pulls forward and backwards, and it works pretty much the way it should. I'm really pleased with it, to be honest. I've put a cycle thread bolt through the bottom, and it tightens up on the longitudinal bar. I think that could be a weak point, and the bar might need dimpled. But for now, it pulls through relatively easily. I was naughty. I did break the rules. I did decide to put a grub screw into here, and it does have an Allen key head, and yes, the Douglas aficionados of the world are now having heart palpitations. I had it in stock, and it works really well. For some reason, it's 3/16 BSF. It's actually probably national fine. I think one of them is really, really close. I drilled right through, and I dimpled the bar that comes down from the gear change lever. Actually, fairly substantially more than dimpled it. I drilled into it 3/16 to let the screw go in a fair way. It works pretty well. So it's a little bit rough in places. The brazing, the welding, well, it is what it is. It's come up pretty well. I'm pretty happy. You'll see when I put it on the bike, it's hidden between the barrel and the flywheel, and so I don't think it's a big deal. It's certainly a lot better than what was on it. What was on it was not going to hold because it didn't have a firm enough grip of the bar that goes up to the gear change knob, and it wouldn't change gears. So that was the biggest deal, I think. bit of a success. Let's get it on the bike and you can have a look at it in place. Well, there's the finished product in place. Sorry, it's almost possible to see. We're lucky the barrel's off. The barrel will be on this side, of course, and the flywheel is mainly on the other side. It's very difficult to see now, so that's why we had a look at it on the bench. You can see it does operate. I've turned the bike over by hand and it pulls into gears and everything. I think the only thing that can possibly go wrong is that this bolt down here can give on this bar, and there's an argument for putting a notch or a dimple in that bar. So we'll see how it goes first. I think I've hacked into it enough. So that's it in place. Next job perhaps is to build a home nickel plating kit. I've got a friend who's really keen on it, so maybe we'll have a go at that. But that'll do for now, I think, until the bike's running, and we can have a hit at it and see, make sure it changes before we go too far down the track. Hey, that's Flat Tank Friday for another week. Really pleased with the outcomes of my efforts this week, but it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. The most important thing for me, made it myself. Took a part that someone had lent me that was made in a factory and produced something that more or less looks right. It isn't perfect, but it was never going to be, because that's not my history. I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. It actuates and changes the gearbox. That was the most important thing. I feel as though I made genuine progress, and I feel as though I actually produced a really difficult part, and it just shows it can be done. I'm not a professional restorer by a long shot, just a guy hacking away in his shed. That's the hacking away in the shed done for this week, and that's Flat Tank Friday. Hope you've enjoyed. If you do, click the like button, leave a comment, and if you really do, hit the subscribe button. Cheers. Have a great weekend.